Welcome into Brewers Daily. I'm your host, Dave Gasper. Lots to get to on the show here today because the Milwaukee Brewers have made a trade here over the weekend. So we got to dig into it, every single aspect of it. They made a 2-for-1 swap with the Kansas City Royals, sending out fourth place Rookie of the Year finisher Isaac Collins, as well as one of the Brewers' top relievers this past year, Nick Mears. They now head to Kansas City, and in return, the Brewers get Angel Zerpa. He comes back, left-handed reliever, and he joins the Milwaukee Brewers now. So the Brewers send out two. They get back one. That opens up a 40-man roster spot for the Brewers. They were at 40. Now they're down at 39. And, this is a very interesting trade, one with some very split opinions on Brewers Twitter, Brewers social media, among Brewers fans that I've seen in terms of looking at this trade and seeing what the Brewers exactly are doing, what they're planning here. Because on its face, this may seem like a bit of an overpay here for the Brewers because, as I mentioned with Isaac Collins, he finished fourth in Rookie of the Year voting. He turned out to be a very valuable piece. I mean, he's basically the starting left fielder for the Brewers most of the season this year. And Nick Mears was one of your top setup guys. So to trade both of them together, to get them both packaged in a deal, only to get one left-handed reliever who hasn't really had the greatest results at the big league level, but to make that kind of trade, it seems maybe puzzling to some. But overall, I mean, I think this is going to end up being a very good trade for the Brewers. I like what they end up doing here, and I think ultimately all the concern initially here is going to end up wearing off because I think Zerpa is going to end up being really good. But I think the question that a lot are asking are, why these two guys? Why Isaac Collins? Why Nick Mears? Why move them? And I've talked on previous Brewers Daily episodes here about how I think Isaac Collins is a regression candidate next year. I mean, he was really above his expected numbers last season. I think he can be pretty good against righties. He was seeing quite a bit of success there, but there was, quite a large chance of regression for Isaac Collins next season. He's going to be 29, entering really his second full season, really a late bloomer. I mean, there's a chance that his breakout is legit, but I think the Brewers kind of saw towards the end where he was kind of trending downwards towards the end of the season. He didn't really play a ton in the playoffs, and they're kind of looking at it like, okay, maybe this is someone who had his flash in the pan, and we need to sell high while we can before we end up getting stuck with them for a little bit too longer and get nothing of value back in return. Nick Mears as well, someone who did really, really well in the first part of the season, but towards the end of the year, perhaps because he was throwing, he was getting up in the bullpen damn near every single game, his stuff started to wear down a bit, and he wasn't quite as effective. The fastball lost a little bit of velocity towards the end. He was left off the roster in the NLCS, which kind of tells you where the Brewers kind of thought of him at that moment, where they didn't put him on because his stuff had been trending downward so much. So they end up moving on from him. And I think that made sense. I mean, he's out of minor league options. And if they're truly concerned about his stuff trending downward, it makes sense to move him while the value is still, somewhat high. And now, granted, this is also where you can, look at this like, hey, that value should be higher for Nick Mears considering what he did, for Isaac Collins considering what he did. But also, I think if I'm able to see that these two guys are regression candidates and they were kind of trending downwards towards the end of the year, other GMs and other front offices were able to see it too. And the Kansas City Royals front office, JJ Piccolo, like they're not dumb over there. So they were able to see those kinds of things too. And there's stuff certainly to like with both of those guys in terms of what they might be able to bring next season. But also, I don't think the value was necessarily as high as a lot of fans might have been thinking what Collins and Mears packaged together could have brought back. So I think that's where it made a ton of sense for the Brewers to still move Mears and Collins while they could, still get something. But again, the value may not have been what everyone was necessarily expecting. The market may simply not have been there because they could look and see why the Brewers were trying to move on from Isaac Collins and Nick Mears. That's why they packaged them together. And that's why they were only able to get really that one player back in return. And, you can look at Angel Zerpa. I believe it's pronounced Angel Zerpa. You can look at him and look at his surface numbers and be like, yeah, 4 something ERA as a reliever. But I think there's a lot of underlying traits here, underlying stuff with Angel Zerpa that makes a ton of sense for the Brewers. Because look, when it comes to the Brewers and pitching, they know what they like. Okay, they have a type, just like men have a type in women, women have a type in men. The Brewers have a type when it comes to pitchers, and their type are guys with outlier, sinkers, sinker slider combos, great stuff, and elite ground ball rates, and that's what Zerpa has. His ground ball rate was in the 99th percentile in Major League Baseball last year. He's got a heavy sinker, really great slider as well. I mean, those are two very plus pitches that the Brewers are going to try and probably tinker with and try and find a way to maximize because they've shown the ability to do that. Chris Hook and the pitching coaching staff, they know how to really maximize the strengths of the pitchers that they have. And there was a lot to work with Angel Zerpa, and that's why they really wanted to target him. And so even though it's only one player coming back for Mears and Collins, that's one player that they believe that they are going to be able to turn into a weapon. And given the Brewers' history with pitching and pitching acquisitions, I think we have every reason to trust them when it comes to their belief in Zerpa here and how they can turn him into a weapon. Because I mean, they have just been phenomenal at it this entire time. So with his sinker slider combo, the ground ball rates, the pitch metrics, the data is all there for the Brewers to kind of tinker with and work with. And he has a couple of other pitches as well. Really, in total, a 4-pitch kind of mix, and when you include his fastball and changeup as well. And that's where also the Brewers have said that they're open to trying Zerpa out as a starter, which is very interesting. I'm not sure how successful that's going to be, especially when you have like 8 other candidates for the starting rotation that the Brewers have that may be much better fits for that. But he's left-handed, and for the Brewers, I mean, their left-handed rotation options are Robert Gasser, Aaron Ashby, and DL Hall currently. So now you add Zerpa to that mix, but Ashby and Hall have largely been relievers. I mean, if either one of them makes the rotation, it takes a lefty out of your bullpen, so you kind of would like another lefty there. Or maybe you like seeing Ashby and Hall out of the bullpen, and you want to go with someone else in that starting rotation. Zerpa maybe could fit in there. I think it's going to be an uphill battle for him to make that. I think they might try to stretch him out, but ultimately, as spring training goes on, he's going to end up being more of a reliever. But still, I think Zerpa, there's a lot to like here in terms of his underlying data. Now, the surface results, again, have not really been there, but the Brewers know what they're looking for. They find guys with these types of profiles that they know they can maximize and turn into much better pitchers. Plus, he's got a minor league option remaining, which is something that the Brewers were looking for. They were seeking flexibility in their bullpen. McNears was out of options, and Zerpa here has an option. So that's going to help them potentially, shuffle guys around in that bullpen if they have to, if he struggles at all, whatever it is. That kind of flexibility is very important to them. So being able to get that is great for the Brewers. And it consolidates a little bit of the low end depth that the Brewers had on their roster by shipping out 2 guys, clearing out that 40-man spot. I mean, Collins, again, his role is going to be diminished next year. Mears, if his stuff kept trending down, you're kind of stuck with him. So being able to flip him here for a lefty reliever with some really good stuff. I mean, Zerpa's still only 26. He's got 3 years of team control remaining. He's only projected like $1.2 million in arbitration this year, so he's not going to cost you a ton. I mean, this isn't really a cost-saving move at all. Mears was only due about $1.5 million. Collins was pre-arbitration, so he was just over league minimum. So it's not about money here. This is about trying to really kind of work around the fringes here of the roster. You cut a little bit of that outfield depth because you just signed Akil Baddoo the other day. So you had a very deep outfield mix. So you can cut Collins from it because he was really kind of limited to being a platoon guy anyways next year, with Mitchell likely being back. You had Lockridge, who had shown pretty well. And then you had Baddoo thrown in there as well. So I think it made a ton of sense to move Collins, made a ton of sense to move Mears, and I think it makes a ton of sense for the Brewers to target a guy like Angel Zerpa. I mean, this is someone that the Brewers front office have been looking at for a long time. And now that they're finally able to get their hands on him and clear out, some of that depth that they were looking to move on from, I think it makes phenomenal sense for the Milwaukee Brewers. And again, if you want to look at it on paper and say that the Brewers overpaid, fine. But I think when all is said and done with this deal, I think we're going to come out saying, wow, the Brewers made a really great trade here because Zerpa is just going to be phenomenal for them because they just have a way of being able to do that as we've seen time and time again. And so now, really, kind of the question now that this trade has happened is: are there still going to be more trades to come? And I think absolutely that's very very possible. And we've talked about Trevor McGill trade. We talked a little bit about Nick Mears as well as a trade candidate, and now kind of the other ones that we've mentioned: Trevor McGill, Freddie Peralta, still on the roster. Could they end up moving here? And I think those are still very real possibilities. I mean, the reliever market is moving. Absolutely. And, I think that's something where the Brewers can still kind of strike where that iron is hot. They still have Abner Uribe to potentially be that lockdown closer type guy. If they want to continue a reshuffle here of the bullpen, I think a McGill trade is something that still would make sense because teams are still looking for closers. And McGill can bring back a lot more value than a Nick Mears and an Isaac Collins put together. So I'm excited for what that could potentially bring. And again, with the Freddie Peralta trade rumors, that's kind of almost its own animal. And that's where, teams are going to keep on calling about Freddie Peralta until the Brewers shut them down and just say, you know what, no, we're not doing it. That's going to be one where they keep on calling and seeing how that starting pitcher market really unfolds until that really kind of develops further. And until we really kind of see some more concrete movement there, I think it's still a very real possibility that Freddie Peralta ends up going. And that's where potentially this whole Zerpa to the rotation idea kind of adds in a little bit of intrigue there. Because if that's another rotation candidate that the Brewers have, it does make it almost a little bit easier to trade a Freddie Peralta because you already have that one extra guy coming in to kind of help backfill a rotation spot. Now, again, don't get me wrong, this is not to say Angel Zerpa is going to come anywhere close to Freddie Peralta's level of production and what he means to the team. Not even close to that, but still, it'd be another body in that depth where you could look at it and say, hey, it'd be a bit easier to maybe trade Freddie Peralta because even in a Peralta trade, you're likely going to be getting a starting pitcher back for him in some form or fashion in that kind of a trade. So I still think it's a possibility, and maybe the Zerpa as a starter idea could make that a little bit easier for the Brewers to look at that being a possibility. So I think there still could be some more trades to come, but there are two candidates that I thought made sense to move that are now on the move, and they're going to Kansas City. So I wish the best of luck to both of them. Collins was great as a rookie this past year. Nick Mears was fantastic, and I'm sure when he got the call, he was warming up in the bullpen, or he thought that the call was to get warmed up in the bullpen, probably when he was informed of the trade, because that's just what he does. He just keeps getting loose in that bullpen. So it's a big move for the Brewers. They're able to get something done, get something across the finish line, and there was likely a lot of work done here at the winter meetings that they're able to finalize in a couple of days after. So we'll see what other conversations that the Brewers had that lead to kind of fruitful finishing deals here this next week, because there's likely going to be a lot more activity here to come. Because guys are going to want to sign, guys are going to want to get these deals locked up before Christmas. That's when everyone gets on holiday. They go on vacation. The front office guys get a little bit of a break. Players like free agents, everyone really gets a little bit of a break over Christmas, New Year's. There's not a ton that happens over that time. So if there's stuff that's getting close, they're going to want to get done here over this next week, over these next couple of days. So a lot more activity potentially still here to come. And we're going to be covering it every single day here on Brewers Daily. Very excited for that. Be sure to I'm kind of dying on the vine here as we're getting a little under the weather. It's been chilly here the last couple of days. Very Very cold. But yeah, be sure to follow me on Twitter at dgasper24 for all my coverage on the Brewers and their moves and takes on what ends up happening here. But also subscribe to Brewers Daily and get notified every single time a new episode drops every single day. And we're excited to continue the coverage of what this team is going to end up doing. So thank you for listening. This has been Brewers Daily.